Hello and welcome to the GrowthExpertz Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller. You're in store for a chat about funding, marketing, startups, and all things growth. All right. Hello and welcome back to the Funded Now What podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Startups. And as always, I'm very excited, but even more so today because we have our first Latin American founder on the show. Saverio, the founder and CEO of Nintx, has just raised $10 million to do what I'm going to tell you you're probably not going to believe. This guy is trying to revolutionize the pharmaceutical industry using biological organic material from the Brazilian rainforest. Is that right, Saverio?
Yes, that's true. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me on this. It's a pleasure to participate in this podcast. You are quite right. I mean, we are trying to use the Brazilian biodiversity as a source for our innovation.
And that's amazing. I mean, I'm probably a little bit more knowledgeable than most people. I haven't spent much time in Brazil, but even from living in Latin America for so long and being an international person, tell people who don't know why the Brazilian rainforest is so special.
So Nintx is trying to develop new therapies. It's the next generation of therapies based on the Brazilian biodiversity. The natural products in general, they are very complex molecules that we can find in nature, bioactive compounds from plants. They are like a very strong, tridimensional, big molecules that you can attach to receptors. You can modify the gut, something that we're going to talk about a lot here, the microbiome, the human microbiome. There is a very interesting study from the American Gut Project that was led by Robert Knight from UCSD in US, and they found out that the thing that most modulates the microbiome, the human microbiome, are the plants. So that's why we need to use the plants to modulate the microbiome and produce a specific impact in our body, in our organisms to treat disease.
It sounds like the future. And I don't know if you know, there's a new popular documentary on Netflix called Don't Die. And it's about this guy in San Francisco. He sold Venmo, made hundreds of millions of dollars. And he talks about this experimental drug. And some of my tenants of the properties I own are actually like followers of this guy. There's this thing called rapamycin, and it's been known to extend human life expectancy. It's already doing it in mice, but it's derived from the soil on Easter Island. So that was initially what I thought about when I met you. You're going to try and take that trend and 100x it with what I was looking for you to say about Brazilian rainforest. From what I know, there's like hundreds, if not thousands of species that are only in that rainforest. You can't find them anywhere else. It's the most biodiverse place on the planet, I believe.
Yes.
And so you have unfettered access. I guess that's my first question. How are you working with the government? How are they going to give you access to all this stuff?
This is a very good question. You mentioned exactly the key point. Brazil is the largest biodiversity in the world. We have 20% of the global biodiversity in Brazil, so it's huge. And this type of source is very powerful. It has been powerful since many years, but what changes now is that we have technology to understand the specificities of that compound. We can really review the nature. So that's why we believe in a re-emergency of the drug discovery based on natural products. So that's why Nintx is all about. And going to your question, basically since 2015, we have now a new law in place, a biodiversity law in Brazil that regulates how you can get access to that specific material, that plant. Also, you need to compensate the community that was the one developing that specific plant. And everything is now very functional. It was not the case in the past, but since 2015, it's much better now. So we have a law to regulate that. So we can do it.
Good, because as an American, the only thing I have known before is about logging companies and like other negative stories about how the Brazilian government has helped international companies take advantage of the biodiversity. So that's, I think, a key point. I mean, one thing that you should definitely think about in your marketing is what you just said, how you're working with the local communities, how you're supporting the continuing protection of the biodiversity through this, with even if it's 1% of the
Yes,
profits.
1%. It's
Yeah, well,
exactly
even
that.
if it's that, I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah,
still going to be millions of dollars, hopefully,
exactly,
for you going back
exactly.
into the protection. I mean, because obviously you have no business if the biodiversity goes away. So, as
Yes,
opposed to those logging, palm oil, horrible
yes,
companies that have taken advantage of Brazil for so long, this is happening from within Brazil now to make money off of it whilst protecting. And I think that is something
yeah,
that the international community will support
yeah,
a lot more than the other news stories that have gotten out pre
yes,
2015.
exactly.
That's really
And
awesome.
Andrew, you mentioned something very interesting because the examples that you gave are more like extracting something from the nature. In our case, we need the nature there intact because we just need to understand some samples in order to develop the product. So we need to be inspired by the nature, but not putting the nature down.
Nice. That's a good tagline as well, inspired by nature. Actually,
Yeah.
shout out to my first ever job after college, which was in Latin America. I was a large tourism company, and that's still the tagline that I came up with in 2008 for the
Okay.
company, inspired by nature. And they're one of the largest tour companies in Mexico. But, well, I want to know, what is it like? I know you have a very large background as well. Let's talk about that before we get into the fundraising. You're
Yes.
not some fresh graduate, first time startup founder. What's your
Yeah.
background, and how did that help you raise $10 million in Brazil?
Fantastic. Great question. In reality, this is one of the key aspects that I believe that makes fund be possible. I mean, really to have a track record that provides some comfort to investors that you can do what you're saying that you can do, right? That you're gonna do, right? So
Hmm.
basically, I have 27 years in the pharmaceutical industry.
Wow.
I'm a pharmacist, biochemistry. I did also MBA and worked most of my life in business, but I have in my team PhDs that founded the company with me that studied like 10 years in US. They have postdoc in Yale. We have also some scientists from Berkeley, from the west side of US, very good university. So we have a very strong team that can really make what we are saying that we're going to do really
And
to
do it.
happen
Yeah.
and do it.
Yeah.
Yes, this
That
is
is
very, very,
definitely
very
a
important.
bonus. We say, you have proof that you can walk the walk. It's not
Yes,
just talk,
exactly.
so that's fair. And 27 years with no gray hair and startups and tech, I don't know how you do it. I have almost 20 years and mine's been gone for a while, but that's amazing. It's the Brazilian rainforest there. Your close
Yeah,
proximity to it is keeping you safe.
yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. But what's the next tip you have for someone that doesn't have that kind of experience? Like, what did you learn from
Yes.
this fundraising time that you can share with our audience about raising money for a startup? It's not an easy time, and it's not
No.
easy in Brazil compared to the United States. So, how did you do it?
I would say I have at least three good tips that everyone should follow. First, the thesis need to be strong. So you need to really have a right to in that space. And in our case, we briefly discussed about Brazil, the Brazilian biodiversity. So this is part of our thesis. So it's easier for the investor to understand why you are doing that, why your thesis is so strong. Then the second tip would be more related to validate your thesis, what you are proposing to do. You need to create some ways to validate, and including in your plan, you should include additional steps of validation of your proposal. This will also provide some comfort to the investors. And the
Hmm.
third aspect is to engage with the potential investor much earlier than you are really considering to get the investment.
Mm.
So if you're planning the seed investment to take place like after 1 year at that point in time, you should start engaging now. You should explain to the investor what are your plans, what you're going to do. And then after, even if they want to invest at this initial discussion, you say, no, give me some time. I'm going to run my plan and then we talk again. And it
Love
will
that.
make a huge difference because
Hmm.
when you speak with them after 1 year, they will look at what you are presenting now. They will look back at what you promised, what your plan was, and then he's going to see that you were able to deliver what you said.
Wow.
So this
That
is
is I've never heard that before. And I think often founders go to raise money when they're running out of money, and that makes you more
Yeah,
desperate.
yeah,
That's a really good point, man. I never thought about it. Basically, meet them, start building the relationship, tell them what you're going to do, and then a year later, they can see the proof. So even if
yes,
you don't have 27 years of experience, you have 1 year that you can show them, look, we get done what we say we're going to do. This is a
yes,
lot less riskier
yeah,
as an investment than it was a year ago. Let's here's what we're going to do this next year. Here's how much money you're going to make. We did it
yes,
last year. Now you can join in. I love that.
exactly.
Very good
Yeah,
sales
yeah,
for a
yeah.
pharmacist. You're pretty good at that too. But
It
that's
happened
awesome.
with us. Was great. And even if they want to invest in that point in time when you are starting the discussion, it will be great if you say no. Please take your time.
Of
Take your
course.
time. Let's discuss again after 1 year. This is powerful.
Hmm.
Mm,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
yeah.
that really, definitely in America, the idea is as your money starts running out, you go run around, look for more money, and that creates an imbalance. You need
Yes.
money more than they need you. And what you're saying is balance it out to where you need each other. And you're actually saying, we don't need you right now in
Yes.
the beginning. So I guess the best tip there is start fundraising when you don't need the money, because
Perfect.
it's going to take a long
Yeah.
time to get it, and you
Yeah.
might need more than you thought by the time it comes around. But I
Yeah.
definitely have seen in my own experience, the less desperate you are, the
Yes.
more the investors look at you as, wow, these guys are going to do it with or without us. We're going to miss this opportunity, as opposed to giving them ridiculously good terms because you're just desperate for the money and you're going to run out
Yes.
at the last
Yes.
second,
Yes.
which
Yes.
some people
Yeah.
are in that situation now that I know. That's
Yeah.
really amazing. Okay, well let's move on to what are you going to do with this
Yes.
$10 million? I actually, even before that, where were the investors? Are they Brazilian investors, American investors, Emirati investors from Dubai? Like, I would imagine the whole world is interested in getting
Yes.
these products out there. So I guess I have two questions. Who are the investors, and what kind of products are you going to be working on with this $10 million?
So basically, when I mentioned to you that the natural products are very complex, tridimensional, it's something powerful. We are using that to treat what we call multifactorial diseases. Diseases
Hmm.
that they don't have just one cause, but more than one cause. Something
Okay.
that it represents a very strong unmet medical need. So like Alzheimer's disease or ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, several diseases that today is
Wow.
not easy to treat, especially because most of the treatments are targeting just one specific receptor biological target. And we believe that besides of this target, you should look at the microbiome. So that's why I mentioned the microbiome and the importance of the microbiome. So we are developing multi-target therapies that will target the biological receptor protein in the brain, but also to modulate the microbiome. So this is our approach, and
Okay.
we are using natural products because they are powerful to do that, and are the ones that modulates the most the microbiome, as I mentioned to you. Initially, our investors were from Brazil.
Of course.
In our thesis or in our plan, we considered that we should first show to the globe, to the world, that we would be able to convince the local investors first, and then for the next round, Andrew, probably we are seeking for investors abroad, outside
Of
of
course.
Brazil, in the Series B round for sure. So this is also a point for us to explore in your tips about marketing, because now I
Yeah.
need to expose Nintx outside of Brazil
Absolutely.
in order to get
Yeah. I
access
mean,
to this network.
for many reasons, I think that I'm really proud that this is a Brazilian company doing this in Brazil, but it's still a global problem that you're trying to
Yeah.
solve. And so it makes a lot of sense opening this up. It would be different if it was Martin Shkreli in New York and his pharmaceutical company trying to, like you said, take things out of Brazil. So obviously, any investor in Brazil is going to be really excited about this. I mean, the rainforest in Brazil is one of the major unique things that
Yes.
Brazil has economically. So it makes sense that something large for the economy comes out of that, and anybody in Brazil should be interested in that. But pharmaceuticals are one of the craziest, largest industries in the United States, for better or worse. I was mentioning to Saverio last time we talked. From a marketing point of view, I've always been interested in it because it's the only country in the world that allows pharmaceutical advertising.
Yeah.
And the list, if you ever get to go to the U.S., I'm sure you do already, but you see
Yeah.
the commercials are
Yes.
10 seconds selling the product and then 20 seconds about the side effects
Yes.
afterwards. So like
Yeah.
this actually being derived from nature, I mean,
Yeah.
tons of marketing opportunity there. And,
Yeah.
I think as a country, people are focused on more natural stuff. I mean, and being more organic. And so even if your medicines are derived from nature, even if it's originally just inspired by nature, like you said, I think there's a
Yes.
ton of
Yes.
marketing potential there, which we'll get into in a second.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so the last
And
question of, well, go ahead.
just a quick comment on the
Sure.
product itself, Andrew. Basically, Nintx means next innovative therapeutics, and our
Okay.
business model is to develop the product until what we call phase one ready. So once we achieve this, so we have the discovery, early discovery, late discovery, then we do all the preclinical regulatory package, we do the scale up for the formulation, and then before we go to humans, we license to a pharmaceutical company. So a
And
big
let them
pharmaceutical.
do the human testing part.
Exactly, exactly. So
That's
our
awesome.
business model is to do that.
That's really cool. Do you have to do exclusive deals or you can license it to many people at once or?
No, normally, the big pharma will buy,
Huh.
I don't know, 80% of the asset. We will continue developing along with them in order to make sure that all the steps are right, and they will be the ones responsible to complete the clinical development, and they will own the commercialization of the asset
Wow.
exclusively. They
I have
will.
so many questions about that, but I think that's really
Mhm.
great context because in essence, it's just a B2B company. You have a
Yes.
large product development phase as a B2B business.
Yeah.
So I guess taking your own advice from the fundraising, are you starting those relationships like
Yes.
years in advance with the pharmaceutical?
Yes.
Hey, we've got this thing in the Brazilian rainforest. We're going to start working on it. And then you can shop around deals and relationships for several years and kind of make them
Yes.
fight with each other and build up a
Exactly
price
that.
before the product's even ready.
Yes, and this is exactly how it works. And I was in the other part of the table. I was really licensing in before.
Got
So
it.
I was engaging with these companies and following up all the steps to make sure that they were doing right. Because if you do wrong in one of the steps, then you're going to lose your project. So you really to
Absolutely.
make sure that everything is in place.
And a lot of time. There's so much time before this ever gets to
Yes,
actual people. I mean, you're talking years of money, time, and team investment before a product ever gets to market. So you better be confident that things are going to work. It's almost like a little bit of VC scouting. So in my world in San Francisco, there are many levels to venture capitalists. And at the, I guess, lowest level, no offense to any scouts listening to this,
hmm
but it's not even a part-time job. I mean, I get approached by many venture capital firms. Andrew, we want you to go scout deals for us. And that's, there's somebody hunting around Brazil looking for these
yeah,
companies developing these new technologies and then
yeah.
develop the relationship.
And it makes sense, Andrew, for the companies right now because all the big pharmas they used to have a huge team doing R&D, but now they are buying startup companies. They
Of
are buying the
course,
project. It's much easier, so they
much
can
easier.
get access to a lot of develops and research in the world.
Absolutely. And you safeguard yourself from competition buying it as well. So you
Yeah.
have to buy it to protect yourself from a
Yes.
competitor getting a huge home run. So you
Yes.
just buy them, even if you're not, that maybe these won't all be the $1 billion next Viagra or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've never used it. I don't know, but I know Viagra was a really good marketing campaign. They made movies
Yes.
about it. Lay off
Yes.
me. But anyway, so you have to protect yourself. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, and
And
for them it's cheap, right, Andrew? Because you are in the beginning of the process, so you're gonna get like hundreds of millions of dollars. But for them, I mean, they didn't put in place a lot of people doing R&D for several years. They're just buying something ready, so it's
right,
very cheap. Very cheap.
cheaper, faster,
Yeah,
less risky. And at the end of the day, just in all industries, startups win because they move faster. And the
Yes.
big companies have so much bureaucratic red tape. They get nervous about being sued. They're not going to go into the rainforest and take samples on their own because they're
No.
not from Brazil. So
Yeah.
many other things. So, that's why we exist. We were able to put big companies out of business because we can move so fast. And that's why they now know they have to play nice with us and buy our
Yes.
stuff, because
Yes.
otherwise they're going to go out of business. And so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree with that. And that's so awesome. So before I get into the marketing stuff, do you need to grow that top of the funnel with those relationships with the potential buyers, or are you just really focused on how do we promote the name Nintx around the world as the innovative company that they need to buy from? Because there's two sides to any B2B sales organization. It's leads and promotions.
Yeah, I think we need to do both in
Okay.
reality. But now the focus is on our projects. We
Okay.
really need to move forward with the projects. We have one of the projects now in the scale-up phase formulation, and the target is to start discussions for licensing the compound in 2026, so next year.
Yeah.
Late next year, we'll be discussing with the companies. So early next JP Morgan, for example, in San Francisco, we'll be there talking to the company, explaining what we do, our platform and everything, in
Wow.
order to license out beginning of 2027. In the next JP Morgan, we do the license of the
So are you
project.
telling me you're not expecting to have any revenue for 2025? It's next year.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. Actually, we have another line of products that are nutraceuticals that they are faster.
Of
We are
course.
developing like few years. We have some of the projects now under registration in Brazil. So these products we can license much earlier,
Hmm.
and then we can get some revenue, but it's nothing compared to what you can get with a
Of
medicine.
course.
So
Of
it's
course. So
different proportions, but you can get some revenue. And also, Andrew, just to talk about the revenues, we also have a platform, a technology in our company. The name is XGI Biomics, that we simulate the gastrointestinal tract of the humans. We
wow.
collect like the poop, a sample of the poop. We put in the machine in the reactor. It grows, and then you have a sample of the microbiota of that person. You do some interventions with nutraceuticals, and then you measure what
The
happened,
effect.
what the effect exactly, the modulation of the microbiome, metabolites that were formed, so a lot of stuff. So this type of projects and products we are developing, we have now 8 projects, and the idea is to start registering, commercializing earlier than that, like 25, 26.
Wow. Okay, so I think I in this year you have why these products are going. I think it's like you said, focus on just really promoting the name, and because by doing
Yes.
all that marketing, which by the way, I call it all PR, but it's you
Yeah.
getting interviews like this, but much more targeted. Startups, media, it's good for the fundraising and the next round you're going to raise. Good to get your name out of there, but really you want to focus on like the medical and the pharmaceutical community media. I always call that niche media. So that could be podcasts, YouTubers, conferences, getting like articles written, but maybe even
Yes.
like what do you call them, journals and medical
Yes.
journals and stuff to cover this. Like it's a very interesting thing that you're working on. So that's where my mind goes first, because the more interesting the story, the more like large the potential impact. We're talking like saving hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives with these products, the easier it is to get a bunch of PR. And so I think that's probably what I would have your team focus on. I mean, posting little things on social media about what we're doing, it's not really going to move the needle a lot, but the
Specialized
lead
ones.
buyer or
Yeah.
purchaser at Bayer Pharmaceuticals, whatever media that person consumes, if they just consistently over time see one article here, one interview here, they go, we have to talk to these guys. And then just like you mentioned at the beginning, it balances the playing field where you go, no, we're not ready yet, just like you said, but in a year you can work with us, just stay on our radar because we're going to do this. So taking a piece from your advice, I think now is really the time to get as much exposure as possible, because there's nothing you have to sell yet. You just create the relationship, maintain it, and then in a year when things are ready, they all know you and people come to you, and the sales cycle becomes very short and very easy. So I think that's probably the first thing we
Yeah.
focus on. Have you guys done any PR, like even around raising the $10 million?
Mostly in Brazil.
Okay.
We did most of the, some journals, some interviews in Brazil, and it helped us to get the Series A
Mm-hmm.
round done. But now, outside of Brazil, we need to start working on that. We
Yep.
had some articles in a specialized journal, like there is a DIA journal that talks about regulatory strategy for new projects, new development. We put some articles there. We have a algorithm, AI machine that connects all the traditional knowledge, because the communities in Brazil, they have a lot of knowledge about some plants
Mm-hmm.
that works for disease. And we have a platform to connect or try to understand why that plant has that specific effect. So we connect with the mechanism of action, disease, and all of that. This is
Great.
also very interesting, and we also hired a startup company from New York to work with us with this platform, with this machine learning tool,
Okay.
and also provided us some exposure outside of
Yeah,
Brazil. But we need to do more, and actually, this
absolutely.
is our next step.
Well, I don't think you need to hire anybody else. I think there's so much talent in Brazil. From what I've seen, I get a lot of applications from there, and you and I know that they're much more affordable than
Yeah.
in America. And I think the key is just training people up, like on American like methodologies. I actually wrote a book about this. I don't do a good job of marketing myself on my own podcast, but so I won't get into it. But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna just rant for the next 10 minutes on how you can do this. I
Sure.
think yourself. So the first thing, before you even hire anyone, as the CEO of this business, the first 10 minutes of your day when you're checking your emails, I want you to go to alerts.google.com after this call. Alerts.google.com. You can set up searches on Google for keywords in English. I don't know if it'll do it in Portuguese, but it doesn't matter because we're talking about focusing on America. And you can add in keywords that Google is going to find every article the night before that has these keywords in it and surface it for you. You should become an expert in all of the media publications related to this industry, even if it's stuff you don't care about, stuff that your potential customers will start caring about. So an example could be like pharmaceutical conference, pharmaceutical podcast, and a gut biome blog,
Yes. Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like this. You just, all the keywords you can think about: podcast, influencer, conference, article, blog, startup. For me, I have someone on my team now doing this, but I still look at the emails. It's a startup raises million, which is how we found you. We
Mm-hmm.
saw an article. So instead of having to peruse through the internet constantly looking for all these things, Google will surface the new content for you. And then 10 minutes at the beginning of the day, you just click on that email, look through the articles. It's a, Medicine Daily magazine or whatever. And you can open it in a tab, and you'd be surprised on that article. Almost 80 to 90% of the time, you click on the author's name, boom, there's the email address. And you can just start a Google Sheet. Again, like building a year in advance before you even need it. Every day, you just add name, email, publication, maybe a link to the article that they wrote. And after a few months, you have 500 emails of reporters and writers, podcast hosts, people, conferences. You actually need to reach out pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
I definitely think you should be
Yeah.
speaking at some conferences in the US about just the potential of the Brazilian rainforest. Like nobody else can
Yes.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So that's your story. It's not so much selling Nintx to these conferences yet. It's the potential of using it, being inspired by nature and pharmaceuticals should be your message. The larger you can make the message and the less salesy the story, the more invites you'll get to speak at conferences. And you can put those logos on the website. You can obviously put those recordings on your LinkedIn and really grow your founder presence, which makes investing and fundraising so easy. They're backing you. That's why also you raised $10 million. Yes, the experience, but they're like, oh, this guy has a 27-year track record. Even more so if they recognize, oh, wow, he was a keynote speaker at this conference.
Yeah.
I think like because Brazil is such a leader in the biodiversity, this should be something that the whole industry is really focused on, the future of. I mean, a lot of tech is talking about going to other planets and letting go of Earth and whatever. But hey, wait, we
Mhm.
still have tens of thousands of opportunities in Brazil to develop life here and save
Yeah.
life here. And so that's kind of an interesting thing there. So developing that PR list, you can also make tabs on that list. So there's Brazilian media, there's US media, there's startup media, there's medical media, pharmaceutical media. You want to kind of segment each of those so that when something interesting happens, like, let's say you win a Brazilian Startup of the Year award. Nobody in America cares about that. You have to email the Brazilian media about that, but they will care. So it's vice versa. If you get to speak in San Diego at a university, nobody in Brazil cares, but
Mhm.
it's worth marketing in America. And like the more releases you can put out, they don't cost anything. You can make a press release in Chat GPT now.
Yeah.
And you need to know how to use Chat GPT. It takes me about 5 minutes to get a good press release out of it now, which would have taken hours to write, but
Yeah.
it's multiple revisions. But still, it's a very quick turnaround. You don't
Yeah.
need a PR agency. I've always said that for 20 years, even though I do offer PR services and what I do, I always like coaching companies how to do it more than I like doing it for them, because no
Okay.
one is going to care about your business as much as you do. And so you
Yeah.
understand the industry and you know exactly which opportunities are going to create the most value for you. I don't really want to speak at San Diego University yet. I think we should go bigger and go to this JP Morgan thing. And then,
Mhm.
so you strategize your PR that way. Like if, let's say 2 months from now, you have that large Google sheet with 500 reporters, you kind of want to sift through the opportunities to take the top 10%,
Okay.
and then, you know, give them some kind of what we call an embargo, or like
Mhm.
a exclusive on the
Exclusive.
story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that's like a slow burn, building that press list. But right now, the first thing I would do is, I mean, $10 million is a big raise for,
Mhm.
especially for a company in Latin America. I
Yeah.
think that you can instantly get in TechCrunch. And from TechCrunch, you can get in any other publication in the United States just on the funding round. So you literally just take one of the articles that you already have, and you can put you or someone junior on it. Hey, email TechCrunch. It's
Mhm.
Anna Heim is the main startup reporter there. Shout out to Anna. Thank you for writing about all my clients every time. But if you can create value for them, then they're going to cover you. And the value is, hey, there's this really cool startup in Brazil that's literally trying to change the world and save millions of lives. They just raised $10 million. Anybody raising that much money, they're going to put the story in. So I think
Okay.
it makes sense to spend this week reaching out to TechCrunch, give them the exclusive. But after that, I don't know. I can't even think of other startup
Yeah.
media off the top of my head, but get those articles, because that's going to help drive some exposure and awareness in the US. There's going to be interest that comes in. And just like you said at the beginning of the call, you can say, hey, we're not interested right now, but thank you so much. And we're going to do this, this, and this, like you said. So just
Yeah.
helps get those inbound relationships. So I would definitely
Okay.
not look past that opportunity. People don't, anytime you raise over $1 million, you have a high chance of TechCrunch publishing an article for you. And
Yeah.
then you can put that in your investor newsletter, on your social media, the logo on your website,
Yeah.
as seen in TechCrunch, write a blog article about it, put it on social media, whatever. It helps a lot. I doubt there's even 20 Brazilian startups a year that get into TechCrunch. So that really will segue you into the American market, I think, really well. It has tens of millions of readers, and it's kind of a strong stamp of approval for going into the US. What do you think about that?
No, fantastic. Makes all sense. We have now a you mentioned about the PR agency. We hire actually in Brazil PR agents,
Ah, awesome.
but it's something really small and very specific, and they are helping a lot. So they can
Yeah,
also they can also get to all the inputs you just gave to me,
yep.
and help me to do that in a best way.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to do it. And in fact, you raised enough money, and you're old enough to not really roll up your sleeves and do all that. You've already done a
No,
lot in your career.
yeah,
So, yeah, send them this recording once we publish it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they can do it. And then if you need, you can hire me to tell them what to do better in
Yeah,
America, and we can
yeah,
talk about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But
This is good because they are pretty focused on Brazil, and now we need to expand, and we need to get to these other forums, the other
It's
conferences, and
it's probably not that different. I think like PR, it's again, the secret to getting PR in America, actually the secret to marketing is just creating as much value as possible. And it's
okay.
actually the same in dating. I used to work for Tinder, and I tell people often
Mhm.
that marketing is dating, it's sales, it's the same
Yeah,
thing. The more value you create for the other person, the more they're going to do what you
sure.
need them to do, period. So
Yeah,
in your case, the more potential value of these therapeutics that you're developing, the more money you're going to get from these people because there's more value potential for them, right? And
yeah,
they're more likely to work with you if you're creating more value. Like, we're going to give you this exclusively. This is, a larger addressable market. You mentioned a lot of ailments and sicknesses and issues that the total addressable market's in the hundreds of millions of people.
yes, yeah,
So that's obviously really valuable for them, because if they can help more people, they can make more money. And so every time with marketing, it's always about thinking about how you can create the most value for the person on the other side. So a reporter at TechCrunch, their job is to talk about anybody raising a lot of money. A lot of the articles are around that.
yeah,
So boom, we have a valuable story because we just raised $10 million for this thing. The same way, the a conference that I would really love you to speak at, you have to figure out a talk that would be really
yeah,
valuable. So I always try with those to make it as widely applicable as possible. It's not, and it's not like one little thing about the Lou Gehrig's disease or Crohn's disease that you're
hmm,
solving. It's actually about the massive potential of saving the world using the Brazilian rainforest.
yeah,
Like, any
yeah, yeah,
conference about medicine might be interested to have you speak.
sure,
Like, even if
yeah,
it's not a pharmaceutical conference, it's about the future of medicine coming from the Brazilian rainforest.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's a really valuable and
yeah,
interesting thing. And someone putting together a conference, that's what they're looking for, the most interesting possible keynotes to get people to buy tickets for their conference. So
yeah,
anytime, I mean, you've done sales, you raised $10 million, so you know this better than me. Anytime you need something, you have to think about, what does that person need?
yeah,
And I think that's how we get successful in PR. Is like, the reporter at Wall Street Journal, they just have a boss that is telling them they have to publish a cool story. So if we can be the coolest possible story that's going to make them look good to their boss, they're going to talk about us. Does that
yes,
make
yes.
sense?
No, totally, and you're totally right, and it's great what you're saying because you're raising this to our attention at this point more than we were focusing on because we are now pretty focused on moving forward with the programs, but we need to do that. And I mean, all the cases that we discuss and we explain at our business model about Nintx, how innovative our proposal is, they are very interested because it's unique. It's not something that they can
Absolutely.
find easily. So we really need to take advantage of this uniqueness of our proposal. The sourcing of our innovation is unique. The
Absolutely.
proposal, the company in general. So we really need to focus more on that in order to take advantage of this.
That I agree. And I think that's the last thing that we'll talk about, is using marketing as part of the selling point for you to these pharmaceutical companies in America. For instance, like I said, putting yourself in their shoes, they want to show that they're using the natural products, they're inspired by nature, they're cutting edge, but also that, they're not hurting the nature, that they're, I
Yeah,
think, like, once your marketing gets much larger on this, then they will be like, oh, it's a corporate social responsibility initiative to work with this company. We could go out and buy um, non-organic,
yeah,
completely synthetic therapeutics, but we chose to work with this Brazilian company because they're using natural inspired stuff, and obviously the more marketing you do, they have to work with you because they're like, oh crap, this
yeah,
company's making so much noise, we have to benefit by partnering with them. I have a client in the telecom space that whenever they close a client that has a really big social media following, we always put out a press release, to a co-joint press release, because we want them to also share it, and we get extra. And that that will be another selling point to working with you. If your marketing is really strong a year from now, everybody in the industry knows you, you're the guy talking about Brazil and about naturally inspired therapeutics, then they have to come and work with you because your marketing has been so strong. So there's definitely extremely high ROI in even that branding and that promotional stuff, because you have that year of product development. So instead of just sitting there waiting for the product to be ready 30 days before it's ready, we're going to start doing the marketing. No, we're going to do it the whole time, build up a lot of it, interest, awareness, and people salivating at the mouth, waiting for this thing to be ready. And then the sales just go like that when it's ready. So I definitely think that's the area. PR is the thing that you should focus on. But again, PR is not just writing blogs and getting articles approved. You got to fly to America at least once a month and speak at every conference. And that's what's really gonna, like, those in-person things. Like, if you can, I can tell you're a confident speaker if you can really like kind of de-nerd the talk with that, no offense, like make it like you're speaking to Andrew, not speaking to a bunch of doctors. That I think will be very unique for the space. Like, get everybody from the public interested in the fact that these new drugs are going to be coming from Brazil and from nature, and then the public sways the opinion of the purchasing companies.
Sure. Yeah. No, this is all great advices.
Good.
And we should be doing that. Take advantage of the momentum, because when we say there is a reemergence of the drug discovery based on natural products, we have good arguments to say why, to explain why we see a reemergence of this drug development. So we have all in place. We just need to do it and get the opportunities to speak, to participate in the conferences and all of that. Yes.
Yeah. Right. No, I think it's going to be much easier than you think. You just need to put the time investment in, and it's kind of a trickle down effect. Like, once you get even the TechCrunch thing, that'll open up a door. You can use that TechCrunch article over and over again in the United States. Like, even if it's to the medical community, like, people know the TechCrunch brand. So I think that's the first thing. I would focus on taking an article that you already have and show TechCrunch, hey, you didn't cover, we raised $10 million. Do you want to interview us? They do a 20-minute phone call. Boom, you get that article up. You can promote that on LinkedIn or whatever, targeting some key investors just to start getting on their radar. They'll follow you. But you can also use that article when you send it to, I don't know, some medical conference. Like, hey, we're this Brazilian startup, but we're doing a lot of big things, and now we're getting covered by American media. You should have our CEO come out and speak. And I think it'll all trickle down. Just the first one is always the hardest. So to get the TechCrunch, it's not going to be hard, and then it becomes easy, and your confidence goes up after that. So, all right, man. Well, I really appreciate you for coming on. I know you're super busy trying to save the world with all these new drugs. So I appreciate your time. Do you have any last questions or things you want to say before I let you go?
No, I think this is really great, and we are also very happy that we have been able to make it happen, because we used to work in big companies. We used to work in teams where we were not able to do everything much faster as we are doing now. Right. We have now the ability to do it faster, and this is great. And this is basically the nature of a startup company.
Absolutely.
And we are in this mission to really promote the reemergence of natural products based on Brazilian biodiversity. And Nintx is targeting that, is targeting multifactorial diseases, as I explained. So if the people want to go and see more about Nintx, nintx.com.br is our website.
We'll have the link below on the episode and all that. But muito obrigado.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, man. Thank you. That has been another episode of the GrowthExpertz funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller. If you liked this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you really liked it, please share with other startup founders and entrepreneurs and business owners in your network. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.